There's a thoughtfulness about Japan that makes it stand out in the world. Of all the places I've been, Japan has this elegance and design quality to it that makes it feel like nothing here happens by accident. So when it comes to work, I guess that surprises me the most, that its work culture has evolved to be what it is. On one side, they've showed the world how to propel itself into the 21st century. On the other side, they've paid a price. And it makes you wonder if this beautiful country that led the world in so many ways is now showing what the future might look like for other countries that have been racing to keep up. Japan is country 9 of 12 work cultures that I'm researching around the world this year. And it's taught me an important lesson about expectations. Let me give you a glimpse inside. The focus isn't on the individual in Japan, it's the group. So when one person can't step out of line, it's very hard to shift a culture. Japan, it was fueled by this economic explosion that lasted for like 30 or 40 years. They were literally leading the world into the future. Then in the 1990s, the bubble burst. And since then, maybe they've now been showing the world what's on the other side of pushing people too hard. Japan has a long legacy of defining and shaping its culture. When you're here, you can feel it all around you through protocols and procedures and etiquette. And in so many ways, it's been a fantastic thing for the country, but can also be challenging for some of the individuals here. And it's when we start to understand work through the lens of expectations, great expectations, that we start to realize how the working culture is formed here.
Death by overwork. A young woman in Japan commits suicide after working more than 100 hours overtime.
Our workers on the shop floor are always thinking of ways to improve the workflow. Kaizen, a Japanese word that simply means to do something better.
Japan has some of the longest working hours in the world.
Japan is a land of expectations. It's been built by a duty culture that it's not about you. It's always about a bigger picture. So the expectations are that you serve that bigger picture. And that was the word that shaped my greatest working around the world lesson in Japan. Expectations. The power of them to lift people up and the power of them to have people fall. For a long time, Japanese work culture was the envy of Western workplaces. The corporate culture that Japanese organizations could build were things of legend, singing a company song together. Midday stretching breaks as a team, employees who would never leave before their boss. These expectations that are always on the shoulders of each person have created a beautiful, friendly, crime-reduced, polite culture in Japan. Every time I go, it's a joy to be in the country. But here's the dark side of this extreme duty culture. Those expectations can also drive people to the edge. You've likely heard that the Japanese have a word for death by overwork, Karoshi. It's behind hundreds of deaths a year in Japan, and likely more that don't get reported.
1 in 5 workers are at risk. Suicide, heart attack, or stroke the main causes.
In Japan, people think that they will be liked more if they work longer hours.
The Japanese came up with this word in the 1970s. After the first reported case of death by overwork in 1969, the government has been aware of this issue for a long time, and despite its efforts, changes have been slow and hard. Again, this is a duty culture. It's not about you. So Karoshi seems like it's extreme. Until you realize it's happening all over the world, Japan may have just been the first to see it happening. Research would say that death through overwork likely affects people we all know. which makes this next phenomenon, something you probably haven't heard about yet, important for all of us to understand. The word this time in Japanese is hikikomori, pulling inward, or severe social withdrawal, where people live in complete isolation for months or years at a time, locked away in a room or a house, and what many of them describe when asked why. If they can explain it, it often starts after they felt a major social or academic failure. They didn't meet expectations, and they simply tried to shut off from the pressure. They estimate this issue affects 500,000 Japanese youth and another 500,000 middle-aged Japanese people. Devastating life impact tied to expectations. This is a glimpse into the dark side of Japan. Trust me, there's a bright side too. Go there and you immediately feel it. Japan is one of the world wonders, full of polite, beautiful, friendly people that are sometimes also suffering inside. And for me, I can't help but pause and reflect on my life and those around me. How have expectations shaped us? When did they lift us up? And when did they let us down? And when you think about work, your work, the workplace you go to every day, or the school, or even the community you belong to, what's the balance point? How do we get our expectations right? Because as I've traveled the world seeking an answer to the question, what creates deeply inspired work? A few things have started to become clear. There are things that build beautiful work. Human-to-human connection, trust, access, opportunity, specialization, and there are things that break it all down. Pressure, disengagement, unwillingness to change. So where do expectations fit? Well, in both categories. Going to Japan, there is no denying the positive pressure of great expectations. And there is also no denying the pain. Which means my work lesson in this episode from Japan to you is this. Recognize the influence of your expectations. The ones you take on your own shoulders and the ones you place on others. Treat them with care. Because through hard work, Japan built an economic miracle. And they also had to come up with words for death by overwork and extreme isolation. It was all tied to expectations. And like I said, Japan has long been a leader in the future of work. For many things, we've followed in their footsteps. So what does the lesson they offer mean to us? Bosses, employees, and students. Let it sink in. Create boundaries around your great expectations, but still create them. And I'll see you next time from Taiwan.